We often think of our spiritual life as something hidden, something between us and God alone. But every now and then, something happens that makes that hidden life visible. A small sign, an unexpected moment, a quiet reassurance. Today I'd like to share a few testimonies like that with you. Stay tuned.
Ave undis spes Maria.
Welcome to Following Padre Pio. We're grateful to all those who quietly helped this apostolate continue reaching souls through Padre Pio's spiritual legacy. Today's stories may touch your heart in ways you did not expect. Recently, many of you have shared your personal experiences, moments where you felt Padre Pio's presence in your life. Some of these moments are quiet, almost easy to overlook. Others are more striking. But all of them, in their own way, remind us that our spiritual life is not something distant. It happens right in the middle of our everyday lives. So today, I'd like to share a few of these testimonies. The first one comes from Lisa, who shared something quite unusual. Now, Lisa, if you're watching this, I've shortened this a bit. I hope you don't mind. Lisa shared, "I love these stories. A lot of them I already know because when I visit Portugal, I always go to Fatima, and just down the road, where the entrance into the church is, there's a small shop that is dedicated to Padre Pio. So over the years, I've collected quite a few Padre Pio books. The most rewarding part for me is that a few times there had been a nun inside the shop who always seems to single me out. The first time she did it, I was a little worried as she instructed me to go to a small corner of the shop. I stood there a little unsure as to why she had said this to me, even though the shop was full of tourists. But none were in this corner. She came over to me carrying what I thought was a golden lantern. It was actually a Padre Pio rosary encased in a very grand-looking case with his rosary beads locked inside. She handed it to me, saying she knew I was one of Padre Pio's spiritual children, and looked to me and looked to the wall behind me, which seemed to be a Padre Pio shrine. It was so beautiful. I was crying gently out of overwhelming joy. For over 20 years now, I've been interested in the life and stories of Padre Pio, and for her to approach me like this in a shop full of tourists was a tad overwhelming for me. I can't imagine. I've prayed to Padre Pio a lot over the years, never for myself, even though sometimes I really could do with help. It was an absolutely amazing experience." What a beautiful story. A shop full of tourists, and yet a nun walks straight to one person and says, "I know you are one of Padre Pio's spiritual children." I can't even imagine how I would react in that situation. And notice this, Lisa had been praying for others all these years. And perhaps some of you can relate to that. You spend so much time praying for your children, your spouse, or friends that you rarely stop to ask God for help yourself. And then, in a completely unexpected moment, she receives this kind of affirmation, almost as if heaven was saying, "You've been seen all along." Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that with us. Now, under one of our videos mentioning Padre Pio's mystical perfume, a viewer wrote this. "After my mother passed, I was talking to my father on the phone. He mentioned that he had smelled flowers in the house, but none were there. I asked him when it happened, and he said, last Sunday night. That was the exact night that I prayed to Padre Pio to check on him because I couldn't get there personally. I'll never forget Padre Pio doing that for me." What a fascinating and warm account. Thank you, dear viewer, for sharing. But we've received many more about this mystical fragrance. Another viewer wrote, "A few years ago, I experienced the scent of roses. It was at a time when I was sick, and I visited a lady who had the Padre Pio mitten. When I entered the room, I walked into a cloud of rose scent. Many times the earthly scent of roses. It lasted for about 40 minutes, and it came in waves. I asked the lady if she was wearing some strong perfume. She said no. When the scent stopped, I shook the lady's hand, and her eyes welled up in tears. I asked her why she was crying, and she said, "It's coming in waves." Padre Pio, pray for me on my earthly journey. That's the beauty of these signs. They're not for show. They are given, I believe, to remind us that heaven is not far away, that the saints are alive and they care. Many of us go through seasons when God feels silent. Moments like these remind us that God's care often reaches us in ways we never expected. Thank you, viewer, for sharing this story. Listening to these stories, one thing becomes clear. For many people, devotion to Padre Pio becomes a real source of strength, hope, and companionship through life's joys and trials. It's a living relationship. And that is also how this apostolate continues. Some viewers feel called to walk more closely with us as protected children of Padre Pio. They help us keep sharing these wonderful and meaningful stories, and in turn, their names and intentions are remembered in regular Holy Masses, and they receive a blessed image of Padre Pio as a small sign that they belong to this spiritual family. If you also feel called to be part of this, you can learn more through the link in the description below. Now let me share one final testimony. A viewer wrote to us about how Padre Pio and the Rosary carried her through a time of complete darkness. Listen to this. I love Saint Padre Pio. I was going through the most awful time a few years ago. I had been married for 19 years when my husband cheated on me and left my son and me, then initiated divorce. During that process, his new partner, with my ex-husband's help, orchestrated the most awful attacks in every way you could imagine. I came across a documentary about the life of Saint Padre Pio. I had never heard of this amazing saint before. It completely changed me and inspired me to buy rosary beads and begin praying to the Holy Mother. I had never done this before and didn't even know how to pray, so I had to learn through YouTube. It completely changed my life. I had an experience where I prayed for something for my son. My prayers were heartfelt and sincere, and just as I was putting a small figurine of the Holy Mother back on the shelf, while I was still holding it, I felt hands on my head. The very next day, my prayer was granted in the most beautiful, organic way. I had also been having vivid dreams about a very old church, even before I saw the documentary about Saint Padre Pio. The image was so clear in my mind. Then, a couple of years ago, I realized that the church in my dreams was the one Saint Padre Pio went to as a child in his hometown. That felt impossible to me because I was not Catholic and had never heard of Saint Padre Pio before. When I saw the church in the documentary, I immediately started crying. Saint Padre Pio is the most incredible saint. I love him dearly. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to share something so personal. And thank you to all of you who shared your stories with us. If any of you watching have a story to share, we would love to hear it. You can share it in the comments below or email us at info@followingpadrepio.org. If today's stories reminded you how deeply Padre Pio still touches souls, we invite you not to remain only a viewer, but to become part of this mission spiritually through the Protected Child of Padre Pio program. Your monthly support helps this apostolate continue reaching those who may be searching for hope, guidance, or consolation at precisely the right moment. More importantly, your intentions and loved ones are spiritually remembered through regular Holy Masses and prayer. If you feel called to take that step, we warmly invite you to join us through the link below.